everybody to our webinar entitled How Do You Set Yourself Up for Technical Stroke Digital Success, and How Do You Avoid Change Resistance? Can you? My name is Kuldip Sandhu, and I'm delighted to be joined by my fellow colleague here, Helen, who's doing a great job with the tech, better than I can. We, we're going to record the session, and there's two reasons for that. One, it helps us to see how we can improve our presentation skills, and secondly, there's for people who have registered but can't attend, we'll put the recording up on the LinkedIn channel and out in the LinkedIn world, so people can replay it at their leisure. So without further ado, shall I just go to the agenda, please? Or shall I do that? I will do that. So our webinar today, I'm going to introduce myself, so will Helen. Let's go back. I'm going to do a little bit of an overview of the impact that COVID-19 has had on businesses and IT, and why digital transformation has come to the fore. I'm going to talk a little bit about putting in place the key components or the foundations for digital transformation success. And then we're going to ask for some audience participation. We're going to be looking for your thoughts and views. You are more than welcome to put a question into the chat function as we go along. Helen or myself will pick it up, and we will try to answer it as soon as we can, but there will be a Q&A session at the end. We're scheduled to finish at 5:15. But our presentation we're aiming to finish around 5 o'clock UK time so that we can do the Q&A. But if we can answer them through the session, we will do as well. After the poll, I'm going to hand over to Helen, and she's going to be talking about change and that lovely word resistance that goes with it or not. And then we're going to go into some scenarios. Myself and Helen have kind of put together 3 scenarios where from our experiences, practical world life experiences, where we've seen digital change work or not work, and why. And we're going to again ask for some more participation through a poll. And I'm going to talk to you about just positioning a world-leading digital gamification platform that is really now resonating with clients to kind of predict the future before you actually do something in your organization. It's a little bit of a teaser, but we'll get to that, and I'm asking Helen some thoughts on that. So just I feel like a bit of a veteran doing these webinars, so I'm going to be very quick with my intro. A lot of people do know me. I've been in the technology. Gone back a bit.
Sorry, that's me letting people in.
That's okay.
People left me with the controls, Kuldip.
Well, you wanted to be a host, so no problem. A little bit about me. I started my career in the UK MOD. Worked in British Aerospace, Reuters, then went to consulting. So I've had 26 years in digital and IT. I actually worked for some really tier 1 consultancies, PwC. I've actually built my own consultancy services. And I've also, a few years ago, I decided to go out on my own and build my own brand. I've called it IQS, Innovative Quality Solutions, and I've done a number of interim assignments as senior roles in digital and IT. As you can see, there's a whole bunch of logos and brands that I've worked with, all for. And I try to solve digital IT transformation problems. And the reason I've got Helen here today is because digital and IT transformation and change go hand in hand. And there's usually lots of barriers and challenges with that. And Helen's going to demystify it for all of us. That's enough about me. Over to you, Helen.
Fabulous, thanks, Kuldip. Let me try and move the slide on without knocking people out of the webinar. So I'm Helen, and I've been working in change management and communications for over 15 years, and through some pretty fierce change. I think if you look at some of the brands there on the right, you'll recognise some of the headlines and challenges that they've been through. And all of that has required really careful change management. Some of it's been really, really difficult, but all of it builds the experience of what makes change work and what absolutely doesn't. So that's what I was bringing today, and what I've enjoyed chatting to Kuldip about separately is the features and things that we can do to make the experience of change and transformation work really well for businesses and for the people in there. So a little bit about me.
No, that's great. Pleasure to have you here, Helen. Shall we kick off into the first slide, which is a little bit about setting some context in terms of where you guys are from. So we'd love you in the chat function, just one word to tell us. Oh, let's go back. Tell us where you are located today. So you can put in if you're in London, Helsinki, Nairobi, wherever you are. Oh, Belgium. Gert is in Belgium. Hello, Gert.
Welcome.
Welcome. It'd be great to see how diverse we are. Hey, there's Gert. Oh, we've got Phil from North Yorkshire Ripper. Oh, LPB from London. Christian from Zurich.
Zurich.
Kent. Oh, Jennifer from Manchester. Yeah, hello,
Manchester,
Jennifer.
up north near me, Jennifer.
Paul in Norwich. Rob,
North.
Pim and Kent. Lovely. So see how diverse Hertfordshire. Steve, nice.
This is really nice. This is what I like about these virtual
The
events.
borough. Who's the borough? Is that Middlesbrough?
I
Yes.
love that. Fabulous. Do we get extra points because Kuldip knew that?
Yeah.
I do love that we can get people from all over the place when we've
Beckenham.
got the virtual events. It's good.
Yes, Iqbal from Beckenham in the east. Gurdip from Farnham in Farnham Common. Right. Is that down the M3 way? I think so. Right. Well, thank you for that. Thank you for participating. Just a little bit of context around digital transformation. Before COVID-19 hit, a lot of organizations were talking to me a lot about digital disruption. And what they were saying was that new digital natives come into their market sector. They are much more nimble and agile. They can pivot. They can enhance the customer experience using technology. And that differentiator really helps them to break into that market segment and get market share from the incumbents, and that rapid kind of disruption has really just been accelerated by COVID-19. And this survey here from PwC, one of my old firms, which came out in March this year, went out to something like over 5,000 respondents in January and February, and they said, where do you think the investment's going to go over the next 3 years as a result of COVID-19? And there's a lot of information there, quite a few bar charts, but if you look on the far left-hand side, it says digital transformation. And the CEOs who responded here said that in the yellow area, 34% think there's going to be moderate 3 to 9% increase in investment in digital technology and solutions, whereas 49% there's going to be significant increases in investment in, i.e., greater than 10% in their digital agenda for their organization. And I would just want to echo that to just say what I'm starting to see, especially as we are now unlocking and businesses are coming back into onto the high street and back to work. I think COVID-19 has just been that accelerator for success. And people have been working remotely, and I think that there'll be some form of remote working continuing, and it will change. And I think a lot of organizations have been delivering their services, being retail, hospitality, online, and I think some of that will continue until we are really on top of the variants and we're managing them very well. So that's just some context of what I think is going to happen going forward. The foundations for digital transformation, it's a complex environment, and it means many things to many people and organizations. Some think of it of just optimizing their website. Some people think about how you can put robotic bots in place to automate business processes. Some people think it's about getting artificial intelligence and doing data analytics. And some people and some organizations think it's about reinventing your business model and really thinking about how you're delivering your products and services differently. I would say, in my definition, it's all of them. and it's about radical change. And radical change really needs to be managed very, very carefully. So here's some 4 pillars of the foundations, I think, for successful digital transformation. And the reason I put these here is that if you look at a lot of the data in the marketplace, they all say that 70 to 80% of digital initiatives fail. So you've got to put these foundations in place to be successful, to get into that top 20% of success. Some of those pillars are fantastic and really rigid kind of transformation planning. So knowing your scope, knowing where you are, knowing where you're going, doing loads of ideation, getting people involved in collaborating and creating solutions and designing those solutions. It requires fantastic thought leadership and people leadership at the top of your organization, right the way from your board down to your CEO, and then empowering staff in your organization so that they're involved in the change, understanding external customer needs and market needs, putting in some benefits realization, ROI models in place, and expectation management. There's usually a whole bunch of stakeholders to satisfy and really manage those expectations, whatever that group is. Um, Third pillar, making sure that you're driving adoption, bringing your suppliers with you, bringing your staff with you, and making sure that you're reporting successes, and where you have failed, learning your lessons from failure and moving on fast from those lessons, learning those lessons. To glue those 3 areas together, I think it's really important to make sure that organizational change management is done in a very fluid and agile way. So understanding where your target operating model is, and target operating models do change because change is really a core mentality of organizations now. So understanding where you're trying to get to, building a culture or a set of behaviors and communicating those behaviors are really important to set the tone right from the top, so that you're able to achieve the high expectations that these programs typically have, and developing those capabilities to deliver on those expectations. And I think I've said this a few times, but I'll say it again: stakeholder management is so important. And what we did in against these kind of 4 areas is we did a lot of polls. But before I show you those polls, I'd really like to get your input. So what we're going to ask you to do is go to slido.com, and use the code there. The code number is 878787. And what we're asking you to do is think about the digital and IT change that you've gone through, be it as an incumbent in the organization, or if you've been a consultant, how you've been working with an organization through a transformation and change, and the behaviors you've seen. And give us a view through a 1 to 5 stars, and tell us how good you think the foundations that I just took you through have been in place in those changes that you've seen. And you need to just sum this up a little bit. So there's the barcode for everybody to either on their laptop, on their and if they're in the office, on their desktop or in their mobile device, you can scan that barcode, go to slido.com, there's the code, and then from 1 to 5, tell us where you think, how good have the level of foundations been in place for delivering successful digital transformation.
Like the TripAdvisor of
Yeah.
foundations in change
Yes.
and digital transformation.
Oh, we've got 4, which is quite interesting. Helen, what do you think so far? I mean, we only got 4 people at the moment. We need more data, but
Well,
that's
I'm glad
better.
that there's nobody down at 1. That would be quite terrible. But I'm not surprised there's not as many at the high end, really, a bit middle of the road. I don't know if I'd like to stay in a 2 or 3 star place for my luxury weekend away.
I was hoping there'd be some kind of bell curve emerging.
You wanted it to be neat. No, I think
Yeah.
that's really interesting.
Yeah. I know there's at least 16 of us on this webinar, and we only have 8 participants on the poll. So if there's a few of you, we'll give you some more time. It can be a little bit tricky getting on. We'd love you to give us your star rating. So we'll give it a few more seconds.
I think as well, it'll be, gosh, think about all the changes that we've been through. I've been through some 1-star, would never return again experiences, and some actual really good ones. I wonder if the longer the change is taken, be an interesting poll to do in the future, that if the longer it takes to the star ratings drop.
Yeah. And just letting people digest that. Well, it's what I thought it would be. Thank you for your input. You can see it's weighted towards more the 2, 1, well, more the 2 and the 3. But there has been some cases. So 20%, we said 20% success earlier. So which kind of marries up. Yeah. So people have seen some successful change in digital IT transformation. So it's good. Oh, it's changed. We've had some more people come in and vote.
Fabulous. Thank you, folks.
Yeah. Okay, we'll move on. Here's some more poll surveys. So this was something that I ran in a webinar in December. And again, we asked them, well, okay, you haven't, the foundations might be missing, or what do you think are the key impediments for digital transformation? And the results are there in front of you, really. I mean, the green area stands out: culture, lack of digital behavior, mindset, and leadership. Here's some more. If I just press the button. Here's another one that was carried out in January, just a few months ago. Again, they are all pointing to a lack of culture for change, the ability to pivot, change, and move at pace. And I think the final one, this was in March. Again, we asked for a word cloud, and we said, well, give us just in 1 or 2 words, describe your pain that you feel during going through a digital transformation. And as you can see, resistance to change, resistance, culture, lack of trust and empowerment. This must be music to your ears, Helen.
Not a surprise.
Yeah. Okay. So with that said, what I'd like you to do is we'd like to repeat that word cloud. And we'd like you to, again, stay, if you can stay on Slido. We've got 2 or 3 polls going throughout this webinar, so please stay with it. If you can go back to Slido, and we'd like to ask you to pick 1 or 2 words which you think describes how you feel when there's poor engagement with digital change. What's your feeling? What's your gut feeling when you see poor engagement with digital change? And if you can, again, there's the barcode, everybody, and just with 1 or 2 words, what do you feel when digital change is poorly enacted on, typically, when there's poor engagement? I wonder who's going to be brave. Oh, here we go. Who's going to be brave enough to no purpose, frustration. Frustration. Staff too busy on BAU. Yeah, they don't have the time.
Plenty of frustration there. And I think that perhaps we have got a group on here that have experienced and are involved in change and want to make it go well. And the frustration lies from it's kind of all there for the taking if you do it properly. It can be frustrating for something not to happen, but it's even more frustrating when you think, well, that should have just happened.
Yeah.
Somebody could have done that and it would have worked. Why did that happen? If it feels like that, I think that's the bit that
Yeah.
brings out actual frustration, because you could see it's almost possible, and then it just isn't.
And when that frustration or lack of success, it just creates change legacy. And then you just get another layer of failed change, and that builds up even more frustration with the incumbent staff, and it makes it harder for the next change.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Opportunity lost. I think that's a great one.
And waste.
And waste. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All experienced and understood. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. We will now, I think that's a nice segue to hand over to you,
It's
Helen.
like we planned it, isn't it? So when I first chatted to Kuldip, we've had plenty of conversations about change, and which brought us to doing this today. I kind of come from the point of view that, are people really resistant to change, or are they just carrying a whole bunch of hopes and fears? And if you look at that list we've just created together previously, and as Kuldip just said, you just carried the things on from the past into the future. We've all experienced some change. It's pretty unusual that somebody hasn't now in a kind of business, certainly one that will be embarking on a digital change or something significant. And all of those feelings for me boil down to hope and fear. So I hope this is going to solve all of the terrible things that the IT and technology means I have to do right now. I hope it's going to make my job easier. I hope it's going to take those boring tasks away and let me get on with something interesting. Or I fear it's going to be exactly as frustrating as the last time. I fear the same people are making the decisions and we didn't quite get there before. I fear my job will change and I don't quite fancy that. I fear that it's going to be difficult for me. I fear disruption for my life. So actually, I think it's hopes and fears. And for me, the real crux of change management is getting into those hopes and fears and understanding what they are and why they exist, and setting about to allay them in the best way you can, or face into them if they will prove to be true. I think sometimes there's a tendency, if say a piece of change is going to affect people negatively at some point, to try and just talk about positives and diminish the negatives, but that will stoke people's fear even more if they suspect or it does become true further down the line. So for me, it's about that hope and fear, and that's the mantra I carry in my pocket and written actually at the front of my book whenever I set about a change project, is what are people going to be hopeful for, and what are they going to be afraid of as they see this change starting, or they get on to the next one. So that's my base theory of things, that it all boils down to hopes and fears rather than just resistance.
That's right. And many of the programs I've worked on, Helen, I've seen people are fearful because they think it's going to negatively impact their role, their job, their career, their remuneration, and that's definitely a fear. And the hope is, when the new leader comes into the organization, that he has come with experience and tool sets and ways of working that will convince maybe the naysayers or the laggards to really make the change happen this time. So there's loads of hope, and it's how you address the hope and the fears in a constructive way, and you have to.
Absolutely. And Phil's just made a good comment. Change in organisations is common and cyclical. You need to tackle the here we go again, and we've been here before attitude. Absolutely, 100%. And this is the hopes and fears where people will immediately go to, oh, here we go again. Or, and we'll come on to this in our scenarios, it's a digital transformation. The world is going to be better. Hurrah. Well, actually, that does not sound that likely. So now we're in a position where I don't quite believe what's going on. So you've got to face into that, and you've got to say, hey, we know that this happened last time, and this is why, and this is what's next. I've had plenty of challenging conversation getting people to start their change program by admitting the flaws of the past. But you absolutely need to put that credibility back in the bank if you've taken it overdrawn by leaving people in the here we go again. This is the latest flavour in town rather than the thing that's going to make a proper difference to people. Thanks for
Sure.
that, Phil.
And we'll come back to this in our scenarios anyway. So shall we kick on? And
Yep.
thank you for that comment, Phil. So is it over to me? Okay.
I think so.
Yeah.
I keep getting the slides wrong, don't I?
Yeah. Don't worry. Core. So scenario 1. This is where there's a core system change, and I've worked in the, I've run IT departments, and I've been a consultant, and I've helped deliver new systems, and particularly ERP systems. And in this scenario, we typically see that the ERP system has been rolled out, say it's SAP or Oracle or it's Microsoft Dynamics, or they've just replaced one module, and it doesn't meet the end user expectations. What that conjures for me is there's probably some foundational elements that have disappeared from this if the end user customer or the people who are going to use that system say that this system doesn't work, it's not as good as the last one. There's probably been some lack of planning, scope, functions and features of the system haven't been communicated. There's probably some expectation management that hasn't been done, because when you roll out a new system, you don't have all the bells and whistles. And nowadays we don't wait for a monolithic platform to be rolled out. We wait for a minimal viable product or a module with core basic functionality, and then we add on to it. And so setting the expectations around that through really good planning is really important. And then the comms around that, the communication and the sponsorship that needs to come from leadership to say, this is what's happening, when it's coming, this is the plan, this is the team that's leading it, these are consultants and our suppliers who are working with us, and making sure there's constant messaging and support as we move into go live and managing the expectation of the delivery, and managing those third parties. I've seen in many cases, and I've been on that side where you were on the consultancy side, where you just see scope, extra scope, and suddenly they're delivering this whole monolithic platform, and nobody's managed that. Nobody's really said, we just need this, let's go live with it, we can iterate it and make it better as we go along. So supply management and the governance around it are very, very important. Helen, your change angle on this would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, so for me, when I turn up with my book with hope and fear written in the front, I start the detective work about the current reality. And exactly as Phil was saying in the chat earlier, you've got to know what's gone before. You've got to know the situation that the employees are in, their employee experience, what's changed for them, what's their reputation, how long has their leaders been there, do they trust their leaders? Robert just brought that up in the chat as well. What is the current reality of the situation you're landing this change in, and really understanding that in detail and all the elements of it. I have about 100 questions that I like to get answered at this point, and to keep answering them, because in a large organization, another piece of change will be happening entirely independently. It might be a complete people change, nothing to do with technology, and without good robust program management, which might be another webinar, you would have separate things going on that could happen concurrently and disrupt the reality that you were landing the change in on the information that you understood at the start. The second thing there is on shared understanding, and exactly as Kuldip said, you've got to set expectations for people. And I again have a conversation around, are we really delivering digital transformation, or are we changing the system? And I know that people like to call a change a digital transformation, but is it going to feel like that to the people? And creating a shared understanding with people, that so that they know what they're going to get and what they're not going to get. This is what the system doesn't do is almost as important as what it does. Because when you come to people who use technology every day at the front line, they will have a list of things that they know it doesn't work about it now. So unless you can address that list and understand it and explain to them what's going along, you sort of lose them a little bit along the way. And then the last thing there is about a bit of practical training. So don't confine the training to the textbook from suppliers. bring it into reality of the other things that the users will experience while they're using it. So will they need additional materials? I've worked on a pharmacy transformation where we would be uploading prescriptions. So they needed to move the paper prescriptions. So let's do that during the training. Let's be interrupted during the training because they're sure going to be interrupted during the work. So it's really hands-on and grounded in that reality. And I think the reality plus the hopes and fears are the real underpinning things here that help people avoid this situation where it doesn't meet expectations.
Anything around practical training, I think that was a key point as well, because having real scenario training rather than, as you said, the textbook training,
Sure.
the vanilla, is so important. Can we replicate the training in our environment, in the context of our environment, so that we really appreciate what we get, is an important one. There's been some comments in the chat box. I'm just going to pick
up a little read of that.
Rob was talking about kind of integrity and ensuring that people are open and honest, and I've just kind of echoed that. And Iqbal is talking about good stakeholder management and making sure that people are informed as early as possible of changes coming, so that they can align with what's going to come down the train. It's like this. The fear or the barriers for change go up, or the fear factor is there if you don't know what's coming. So you have to demystify the future in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. And that trust, but the trust and credibility is based on your experience. So you will have a bunch of fears if they don't show trustworthy behavior and haven't earned that trust through action already. And the previous actions weigh heavy. Even if it's a different set of leaders, they still weigh heavy on the employee. If you remember when we trusted the last person that said they were going to do this, and actually they didn't. So how are you different? You need to work even harder if they've had a tougher experience. So that's the current reality, but absolutely chiming in there.
Mm-hmm. We'll move on to the next scenario, but there's another comment coming from Chris. Maybe you want to have a quick look at that while I open up the next one. So the second scenario is a little bit to do with channel shift, and hopefully people in the technology world will recognize this. A new leader in the service desk comes in. He really wants to improve the stability of IT operations, and he's decided to roll out new processes and a tool for incident service request management. But as he's done that and he thinks he's implemented and he's got success, staff still come and turn up and walk into the service desk team and say, can you reset my password? Can you give me the new software, please? Can you make sure I got a server so I can do my testing? When there's a system in place to book your request, to manage instances as well. So we're not saying that everybody should not be allowed to walk into the service desk, but there's a process now, and there's a way of working that hasn't been realized, and that shift left concept. And what that conjures for me, and I've been in this scenario a number of times, is when you're creating your new ways of working or your best practice processes against standards and governance models and so forth, they are only best practices. They really need to be tailored to the context of your organization. And actually, they need to be co-created with the people who are going to run with those ways of working. It's that classic case of, if you create a process flow and a document or a policy, and you say to staff, this is the way we're working, the first reaction is to go, oh, that's great, thank you, and then walk away, and then they put that piece of paper or that document in on the desk, or never look at it again. Because what you haven't done is you haven't engaged staff. You haven't walked them through what the problem areas are or the pain that users feel, and they haven't been allowed to unload the pain, so that you can then come up with a solution to fix the pain with them, so that you can solution and co-create a better way of working to fix the problem. And if you co-create with them and they take that on board, they're more likely to adopt those new ways of working. And if you support them with really proactive practical training, in this scenario, ITIL best practice training, maybe some simulation training, which we'll come on to a little bit later, and some other aspects of real training tailored to their new ways of working, you're likely to get more adoption of those best practices and new ways of working and get the benefits out of it. Helen, your thoughts?
Yeah, so when we talked about this scenario, I think it comes down to the another one of the core bits in your change locker is the project vision. Like, why are we doing this? What is the benefit for the users? What's the benefit for the business? Getting people to really buy into why something's happening. Because while on the face of it, it might seem inconvenient that you can't just go and see somebody in the IT department that you know and can do something for you quickly, setting out the barriers that puts into things like creating problem management expertise, because you see repeated problems with certain types of equipment that can mean that the problem can go away forever rather than it's something that repeats. You tell that story to people and get the vision out there, then you're much more likely to get buy-in. It needs to be beyond instruction. It can't be, you must now fill this in and send it to this department in this way, and that's it. It's kind of, people want to know why when you want them to change behavior, for sure. The other thing there I've put around equipping leaders, and I encourage the leaders to create their own belief. There's two versions of what your boss can say to you. They can say, I've been told that you now have to fill this thing in to get anything out of IT, because that's the way they're doing it. Or they can say, hey, I've been told, the guys from IT have told us how things are working there and how they want to get to the bottom of some better problem management and really solve things for us. So the way that we're going to help them do that so we get a benefit is to do it like this. Those are two different messages. And one could be from a leader that's not been taken through why this is happening with that vision, to help them to create their own beliefs so that they can say it in their own words. They're not just reading what someone like me has written about what's going on, that they are really owning what's happening and are confident about it. And then, as Kuldip said, the voice of the customer. So how are you involving maybe a network of change champions or people that straddle between the user community and the IT department to say, this is the frustrations, this is what we need, and using that community to help you embed the change and get honest feedback and helping with early stages of rollout and testing and making sure it lands well and helping you see the real issues if there's escalations and noise at the start. So really having good mechanisms to listen to people in an ongoing way, rather than assume we know all the things that are going wrong and this is how people will feel about it, and go off and create a solution and then find out that it bounces. So it's a lot of effort into storytelling, really, and taking people through why the thing is happening and giving them a stake in it so that they can have that conversation ongoing rather than they're just recipients of a new something that feels difficult.
Yeah, and I'm just echoing something I've seen in the chat function, Helen. It's not just about end users and customers feeling the pain and addressing that, but the IT team and the folks need to understand that pain, and they need to start believing in what they can do to fix that problem or problems. Again, you know, winning the hearts and minds of the IT team is as important.
Yeah.
Yeah, getting them into an environment where they feel empowered to actually make a change and a difference. So, you know, creating teams or incident teams or problem teams that are fixing those kind of process areas, empowering them with the training, empowering them with the support from the leaders, with the vision, so that they can engage the business. I've worked in IT departments where the IT leader has asked all his IT team not to engage business divisions and customers. And
Well, it can be an us and them, can't it? Where it's like,
yeah,
they won't do this and they don't do that. Actually, we're all just trying to do the same stuff. So have a proper conversation and set mechanisms up to say, hey, we're all trying to get to the same place. How about we do that together? And that just feels nicer for people.
Absolutely.
Really.
Yeah, you can only fix a
What
problem
Lee's
if you know what
saying
the
in the
problem
chat, he
is.
said exactly that in the chat.
Yeah,
Really.
I've seen that from Lee, and I've also
Yeah.
seen something, just picking up on Steve's comment, COVID-19 and moving to remote working.
Yeah.
It was something you had to do. There was no mandate from the CEO. The mandate came from COVID-19. It said you have to work in a different way so that your business can survive and communicate with you across your organization, because you have to work from home. So I think staff were automatically empowered to go and do stuff. And I think I was about this time last year, there was loads of IT departments running around getting in Microsoft Teams additional licenses, more compute power, making sure security aspects were in control, because they were empowered. They got empowered to do it.
Yeah.
They had to do it.
And people had a single-minded goal, and this, outside digital transformation, the work that I do with organizations on their overall purpose is, if you've got a really clear goal and you can allow people to find their own ways to work towards that, and they get the point and they're empowered to act in that direction, it's really nice. People, there was we were working with 2 businesses at this time last year, and there was a great deal of energy. There was a kind of, we can do this. We can get back online for customers. We can make this technology work. We can work through these challenges, and there was a proper positive energy in a really weird way about overcoming a massive challenge and working in a collective to a single-minded goal. It was really good, and I think that is something absolutely to build on, and it gives you that license now to bring that onto the table, exactly as you've said, to say, hey, we can do things that are really hard.
There was a sense of purpose in a way.
Yeah.
There's a sense of purpose, and people galvanized in groups. And I remember I was in the middle of an IT department at that stage, and I remember the CEO saying, Kuldip, have we got enough licenses? Because we'd gone to Windows 10, and we were using Teams, and he was worried about we didn't have enough laptops to roll out. We were rebuilding laptops, buying in equipment so that we could give that
energy behind it, wasn't there? Energy to that purpose that made people work towards a goal. And while a goal of setting out service management requests doesn't quite have that galvanization in the face of it, actually it can, if you really unpick that with a good interactive set of stories and some real activation and some proper conversations, it really can feel purposeful for people.
Yeah, and my only concern, and I think it is, as we go back and organizations are now ramping up, we still continue to maintain that sense of purpose. And if the investment's now going into the digital world and using technology to enable, let's maintain that purpose. How do we continue to galvanize our troops to have that sense of purpose? And if you think about it, when COVID-19 hit, there wasn't a whole level of governance around this. We had to just do stuff. And that's telling me a story about a loose level. You still need to have your purpose, but you still there's a looseness about letting people, empowering people to go and do stuff, let them get on with it, because there's skills and capability everywhere. And I'm not saying it's perfect in every company and every organization, but there is something about allowing people to go and get stuff done. And
get stuff done with clarity of what the direction is in, and then just let them get on with it.
Rob has had to leave, but he's it's nice to see him. Okay, that's great. There's some more comments, Helen, I'm picking up on. I don't know, Chris, I missed you off, and you're talking about different type of organizational development.
Gosh, you're so right there, Chris. That's exactly, you're solving it with old thinking, right? Where you think, well, how do we reshuffle the cards that we've currently got, or the chairs on the deck that we currently have, instead of thinking, how do we actually organize this business around the services and the way that we're going to transform it digitally, rather than sort of retrofitting. And it's a big challenge, that, I mean, not suggesting that that's easy, because there are the people implications of not matching people to roles and you know, the level of reorganization that might take. It needs to be looked at, doesn't it? It can't be ignored because people are half of the thing that's going on.
Absolutely. Please keep on firing in those comments.
Yeah, thank you. This is really nice.
Yeah. Should we?
Final scenario, drum
yeah.
roll.
Well, we got a little.
Oh, we've got a little poll.
Yeah. Do you want to run this one?
Yeah. So this was another of our 5-star ratings. So I've talked a little bit about hopes and fears and the things that the storytelling that people need to do to get over change and to make change land well. So get the TripAdvisor reviews again, please, back onto Slido if that's okay. How many stars would you give for changes that you've been through that have addressed the hopes and fears? Maybe yours, maybe more generally, kind of what scores would you say for getting people's fears and things addressed? So back to Slido.com, same code, same things. You should be able to just give us a little 5-star rating, 5 out of 5-star rating to see how they've been. Oh, can we rate fears and hopes separately from Gert? Or how about, I think fears needs more. Yeah, probably. I guess I think there's probably more fears. There are some people that come at it with hope. But the fears are the ones we perhaps hear the most when we hear change resistance, or we hear people going through change. You probably get a longer list of fears. So yeah, I think it's a good call, that Gert. We might want to weight it towards fears, but you know, addressing either of them. So they've either faced into, yes, we know what people are hopeful for here, and we're going to try and explain to them what this is going to do for those hopes to meet them. And what about fears? Have they really understood people's fears and then addressed them, faced into them and got there? This is a surprising set of results, actually. I can't quite see on my screen the number of responses.
8.
But it feels like the changes you've experienced have addressed the fears of the audience and have faced into the situation and helped people to work through it to avoid that change resistance. So that's really interesting. Thank you for that.
Great. Shall we just move into our final scenario?
Jump onto that one.
Yep. Okay. So in the third scenario, it's this full-scale digital transformation. The organization have brought on board a brand new chief digital information officer. He's got the remit to transform the IT function, but he also has a remit for digital transformation across the organization. So he's looking at innovation, he's looking at how to use data to give them insight to where to change and transform. And he's done a few things. He's rapidly convened a town hall meeting within 2 weeks of arriving. Alarm bell number one. Secondly, he then starts to restructure his department, and miraculously, a few weeks into the restructure, 3 weeks into the consultation, there's a number of senior resignations, alarm bells ringing again and again. And he also then suddenly publishes a brand new digital and IT strategy, and he sends it out across the organization and says, this is where we're going. Please cascade it to your teams and I'll be in touch. And he says, we'll start implementing. Alarm bells, alarm bells, alarm bells. And guys, I have seen, maybe not in a whole way, but all these 3 scenarios.
This is like the soap opera version of it, isn't it? Where it all happens at once, but equally they all happen separately.
Yeah. And so some of the foundations, so you remember I was talking about foundations, and this chappie, or it could be a she, sorry, hasn't really, in my view, thought about why do we need to change, what needs to be changing, where are we today the legacy change that the organization's gone through. Where have they come from? What do people feel about hope and fears? Are they ready for change? What type of change? How should we make the change happen? And I really need to involve people. He's taken his senior role and his mandate as, I'm the one who's going to make it all happen, and please follow me. I am the leader, please follow me. Which is, I think that type of leadership really doesn't sit well in today's organizations. People, I think the type of leadership we need is servant leadership. And what I mean by servant leadership are people who are empowering the organization, helping people to grow and develop, and providing them with an environment and platforms and information so that they can be successful, rather than one, with the rah rah. There's got to be some of that when it's required, but more the servant type leader. And something that I've highlighted in red, for his scenario to work, wouldn't it have been great for him to simulate what the world could look like for him and his team and his staff, and knowing what the results of those changes could be? And that's why I'd like to introduce simulation training in a minute, and why that could be beneficial for teams. But before I do that, I want to hand over to Helen.
So this is the culmination of it all, and as Kuldip said, this might be the baddie soap opera version of this, but I've certainly experienced some of the things over there. Although, as Chris said, they might be really glad that everybody's resigned, so they don't pay redundancy costs. Maybe it's a tactic. So for me, this is about aligning the whole purpose of the business and the entire business having really clear, this is where we're going, this is why we're here, the emotional reason we do what we do, the ambition and how we're going to get there, and the strategic pillars, and then how this supports that. So really unpicking the full business level of the story, and then this program and how it supports that, and what the actions would be to do it. I think we've said the word stakeholders enough times, haven't we, to say that this is where it gets an awful lot more complicated, and particularly if you've got some senior people that are critical, and then you take an approach that doesn't get them on board, then you might be losing experience that is going to cost you an awful lot to replace, and certainly the inside knowledge would be even harder to replace. Having a really robust stakeholder map and understanding what this change will do to people, how it would make them feel, how we can get them to support it, what their influence is really, really important when the change becomes bigger scale. And having that moving and managed really regularly across the program is really, really important. And then involving people. My favourite thing is the kind of bookend of the two things I talk about, the hopes and fears, and then involving people. So getting people to do something interesting and active as part of a change. There's a word on the left there that we put in the scenario, and that's cascading, and it brings me out in hives. I've been in communications for like 15 years, and cascading is just like here is the news. I'll just read it out to you. You pin your ears back. I'm giving you a good telling to, and then you can go away, and my word will be. You've no idea if anybody cared. You've no idea if they agree or not. People need to give them room to be involved, and they need a creative and interesting way to do that. It can't just be a conversation. There are millions of different crazy things that I've done in organisations to really get people on board, where they do an interactive thing rather than it's a passive listen. And that's super important, that they feel they've got a real skin in the game, they understand it, how it fits to the purpose, their job and their future, and they think, yeah, this is the thing that I want to be involved in. I'm quite energized by it, rather than this scenario we've described feeling like a tsunami of things that happened to you. So that was it for me on those things.
No, that's great. I just wanted to elaborate on my comment around simulating the change. So when you've got a full scale digital transformation, be it business model to websites, whatever the scope is, I think leaders have an opportunity to think about how they're going to re-energize their teams, how they're going to engage their teams, how they're going to build consensus, how we're going to break silos, how can they take them away into a safe environment. And that's why I wanted to introduce you to digital transformation training and gamification. This is a world-leading platform that we've developed, which simulates digital transformation and how IT and the business need to work together. And you can see a little cycle there. You consider your strategy or your play, you implement it, you observe it through a number of dashboards and KPIs, and you review. And you play that over a number of rounds as you mature your IT department and align it to the business and the digital agenda. And this training is done over a half day or one day in a virtual world, simulating being an airline in the airline industry, and working through with your teams the types of strategies and plays that you are likely to be beneficial, not in just in the game, but maybe in your own culture and your own environment that would help to bring about that digital change. Um, we launched this in January, and some of my clients are now really taking to it. And Helen, I know that you went on one of these sessions, and just wondering if you got some thoughts around how this can help.
Yeah, it was really interesting because I thought, oh, this is really techy, and we've already seen from my management of the slides, that's not where my gifts lie. But actually, what was really interesting is you could tell that the people that were involved in it were making the kind of decisions that they would make in real life. And it was a little bit competitive. It was quite nice that they were saying, oh, well, I bought reports in that round and you didn't buy reports, and we know reporting is important. And then you could see that they would scurry off in the next round and think, well, I'll get the reports and catch you up. There's a little bit of a leaderboard in there that allows them to change. So while some of it is technical, it's actually really geared towards the people that will be using it and the kind of decisions that they would be making in everyday running of an IT function, just the trade-offs, the things that they would need to prioritize, the things that you could invest more time and resources in, but will be at the expense of something else. So how does that play out? And being able to say, oh, actually, yeah, that played out that way, could help you with that decision making. And as the rounds progress, you refine in decisions. But I did love the competitiveness. I thought that was really nice.
That's right, and I think you hit the nail on the head. IT tend to live in a world of limited resources and capacity, while there's loads of demands placed on them. So how do you manage having a stable IT operations and with live services, and then bringing in new features and functions which our customers are demanding or the business is demanding? And then how do you make the decision where you put your effort, and then watching that play out? It's great not just for IT folks to do this, but I think the business, we've had some senior business people come on this, and they can then appreciate the constraints and the challenges that the IT department as well has. But it also gives them gives the attendees a way of appreciating some of the best practices that you can apply, some like service management, DevOps, moving to the cloud, agile ways of working, test-driven development. And I'm just picking up on Lee's comment, and he's saying he's done some gamification exercises on service delivery, and a great way of getting senior people to experience the sharp end of service. Absolutely.
The sharp end, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Helen mentioned the leaderboard. We're always very careful that the leaderboard is anonymous in a way, because you don't want your most senior people to be at the bottom of that leaderboard, because they could be at the sharp end, right? So absolutely, it's a competitive but fun half day or way day. So it really is adding value to some of the clients I'm working with. And if you do feel this could be relevant to your organization, please do reach out to us. Any final comments from you, Helen, before we go to our
No,
final
I've enjoyed that session. Thank you, everybody, for lots of comments and interaction. That makes it really lovely. So we're not just talking to each other, partner here. That's really helped. And it was just anything else that you'd be interested in, any questions that you've got for us. We'll just have a quick check on the comments. I think we've picked up most things, but anything else that you want to feedback, or anything else that you think might be interesting to listen to in the future, or any questions?
Yeah, I'm just glancing through some of the comments. Iqbal's given some more comments. around addressing fears. Paul Hookham is giving a quote from Einstein that
Yes, I read that.
yeah, you can't solve today's problem with the same thinking. I think there is a mindset change that's absolutely happening and required to give the right leadership to bring about the necessary change. And
That's some of the
sometimes,
tactics in I've done in change management when we've had to. It wasn't digital change; it was a rebrand. We needed the people to feel really different, but sat in the same job with the same people in the same rooms, but they needed to feel really different. So it had to be really, really disruptive. It had to create the way for them to think and have a different mindset. They weren't just taking on information, they had to completely unpick their whole way of working. So we did something quite radical to them to make that work. So getting people into a disruptive space is super important. If you're trying to make it really different, it needs to feel a little bit old in the way that they interact with it and the way that they hear about it just as much.
Helen, you have the ability to take people off mute.
Do I?
If they want to ask a
There's a
question.
chance that I might not get that right though. Let's try.
Oh, can I?
Thanks, Iqbal. That's really kind. Digital collaboration across the borders between enterprises, Chris. That's really interesting.
Thank you for your comments, Lee and Phil, supporting the simulation experience. One of the toughest changes I've said, Ben, was using change manager back in the day when. Yeah. Okay, that's IT change management, I assume, Lee. Is Lee there? Let's get Lee off mute. Have you been able to work out how we get people?
Yeah, I think I've allowed people to unmute.
Yeah, if you want to ask a question or raise a point or make a comment, we've got 5 or 10 more minutes.
Phil T, I like that. I might write that next to my hopes
Lee
and
can't
fears.
Lee can't unmute.
I can't. It'll probably be user error from me, Lee.
Okay, but I was going to say, one of the things on IT change management, Lee, is ITIL. A lot of organizations take the ITIL Bible and start going, well, we're going to have a normal change, an emergency change, and then we're going to have a standard change, and retrospectives. And I go, it makes me scream, because actually what they should be thinking about is doing agile change. So breaking things down into small, sizable chunks of functionality or features or changes, so that you can, and having lots of feedback loops with customers and end users, so that you're de-risking the change, so they become so low risk that you can introduce that change without any fear, kind of from an IT perspective. So you should be moving towards, and it's that kind of moving towards that DevOps culture. And I think building the continuous integration, continuous development pipeline in IT is really, really important. Gertz, there must be a way of unmuting.
Can you hear me now? Kuldip,
yeah.
Helen?
Hello. Yes.
Hiya, it's Lee.
Hey, Lee.
Hi,
How are you?
Lee.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. And you?
Crack the technology there.
Yeah, we got it working
You can
eventually.
tell that I'm not on that side of things, can't you, Lee?
No problem. It's been a really good session, thank you. And I think the gamification thing, I've seen that in action, and I've used it with a few teams, and it works really well. Can work really well. It's be interesting to see how it's applied with your digital change.
Yeah.
Aspect.
Well, Lee, I can follow up with you. I can run a demo with you very quickly in the near future if we want to on that.
It'd be interesting. Thank you.
Do you have any thoughts on the IT change in your comment? I think you might want.
Yeah, I mean, that goes way back. I think that was, you know, that's a good number of years ago, but I think it typifies the whole kind of approach that if you don't, you know, I'm a great one for sort of always go back to sort of, you've got to tell the story. And you've got to be able to sort of take people along with you on sounds cliched, but along on the journey that you're starting out on. And if you don't get that engagement from within your own teams at the very start, it becomes incredibly difficult, because if they've got to implement something on, you know, in the wider user community, it just makes things so much more difficult to do. But we've come up with, well, say we, way back at a previous organization, we had lots of issues, you know, sort of introducing, it was a new service, it was, you know, we were cherry picking the best bits of ITIL, we were introducing a new service management tool, we were providing everybody with ITIL training, and we were even getting resistance on people being offered training as well. I don't want to do training, I don't want to do a certification, you can't make me do it. So it's a really, it can be a real minefield. And that's you know, that was without getting into the whole kind of, you know, the sort of, I guess, the wider purpose of this conversation around digital transformation and change and being able to sort of, you know, implement all of those good things across an organization. So yeah, it can be incredibly challenging.
It's the same thing, isn't it, that taking people through a change in a meaningful way, if you don't, you just end up doing twice as much later. If you get to the Mexican standoff where they say, I don't want training, the kind of belief in that needs to be created way before it's on the table, so that they're kind of like, when can I have it? Not, I don't want it. When you get to that point, it's so much harder to row back from. More expensive, right? All the way along.
Absolutely.
And Lee, I mean, not to put you in the spot, but did you get a chance to explore the fears of why they didn't want to take up the training? Was that because, you know, what was the motivation for that, or lack of motivation, I should say?
I think because we actually missed a trick in terms of telling the story as to why we were doing it and what the benefits would be, and you know, the whole hopes and fears thing. And, you know, I think I sort of said in the chat, you know, also what the will it help me or will it hinder me, that type of thing. And I think it was just, we were also doing it was literally, it was the first time we were formally introducing elements of ITIL across the organization and a new service desk simultaneously. We underestimated the time that would take and felt we could do it a lot quicker, but it was, I think it was about 18 months from start to finish to get it fully embedded. And
I think that's about right.
We underestimated probably we were probably thinking more about the impact on the user and how, you know, what the benefits and hopes and fears would be for them, as and underestimating the impact on the teams that would actually have to, you know, support,
change their ways of working and engage people.
So I think we underestimated it. We underestimated how big the piece of work was and the impact on our own teams. And then conversely, I've also worked in environments where, you know, even with a DevOps setup, that's you know, that's, I've seen one side of the fence that's moving in an agile, you know, very, very quick, dynamic way, and the kind of the infrastructure operations environment, which is moving at a completely different pace. And you know, again, the way that the whole DevOps thing was introduced, clearly, and it was before I joined the organization. So, but it was evident that there was a lack of, I don't know, to coin a word that doesn't exist, joined upness. You know, it wasn't.
That does exist.
Oh, well, there you go. Who knew? But so yeah, it's. I think this whole topic is it's one that's always going to be relevant and prevalent, and you know, it's always going to catch you out if you don't kind of pay attention and make sure that you know, from the outset, doesn't matter what the changes, if it's a big organizational wide digital change of direction or path, or something, you know, of a smaller capacity, it's still got the, you know, if you don't follow those kind of rules of engagement, it can still come back and bite you.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
I'll shut up now.
Thanks for that, Lee.
Right,
No, that's great. I'll follow up with you, Lee, on the because the digital simulation training is a next step change from the ITSM poll stars that you were talking about. Yeah, we've just evolved it and we've now moved it into a virtual play, and I'm hoping you'll be impressed again.
Excellent. Look forward to that.
Okay. Gert, you had I Phil Totti, I know you've put some comments in, and I know Gert as well. Does anybody of the two want to make a comment or thoughts?
You're actually asking me to give a comment on my own comment. Is that it?
Well, it doesn't have to be a comment, but I can pick it up and read it, but I just thought you might want to elaborate. And
well, one of the things that I think is really interesting is like when you have several organizations, especially now when they're moving into the clouds and they're doing all kinds of other stuffs, and they're moving their infrastructure, for instance, into other organizations for them to manage it. And then one of the comments that Lee mentioned is really, really pertinent, because what you see is that many of the pure infra, you know, in French, we call them boîtes, you know, infra companies, they are still within very, very strictly the Prince2 waterfall type stuff, which I fully understand. All right. I mean, it's like, I do not wish to attack Prince2 at all, because I think it's got a fantastic place in certain organizations, especially organizations with, you know, that are dealing with systems of record, for instance, systems. There, I think you do not want to go like, oh, well, let's change that in production, let's change that in production, and well, if it doesn't work, let's just turn it back. On a systems of record, you probably don't want to do that. Anyway, that's just me personal. So, but then you have these infrastructure systems that are working on, you know, Prince2 stuffs, and then you have the client that's going full DevOps, going like, okay, well, I'm going to move this, and this. I'm going to do this in sprints of 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever. And then the supplier goes like, yeah, could you possibly put in an RFC that we're going to, you know, blah, 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 blah. And before we know it, we're 3 sprints further and the RFC has now just been approved. I think that's an interesting one to tackle as well and take along, because that really, really puts the two of them in, I'm not going to say in juxtaposition, but it puts both worlds together. And it's it reminds me of a movie. The title escapes me. It's something with 2 worlds, you know, being on top of each other, and one lives, you know, in inverse of the other one. It's one that might be interesting. That is something that I live with, for instance, on a daily basis. And getting these 2 worlds together, and then trying to de-risk a change, where you're going like, okay, well, de-risking for one means it has to pass 3 cabs that are at least a week apart, and the other one goes like, listen, I know what I'm doing. Let's just get this done. That is such an interesting dynamic, and I don't have the solution. But I just thought I'd throw that onto the table.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you know, the comment I made a little bit earlier is breaking it down to smaller pieces so you can void the cab. I think we're moving to a world where the cab has its purpose, but it could be just for some big changes. We should really be moving towards small functional changes that are, you know, a low risk. But to get the mindset to work in that way between operations, infrastructure, and development is not easy, because they have different objectives in some ways. One, they're trying to stabilize, keep everything running. And on the other side, the customer demand is saying we want new functions and features because our customers and the end users demand it. And they want to get things through quickly. And these guys, well, oh, hold on. Let me check that. I want to see, have you done the testing? Have you done this and that? where's that compromise? Where's that compromise? It's a tough one.
I would say it's who's got the checkbook.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's a I understand that concept, but who takes the risk? Who
Yeah.
takes the risk, right? That they introduce something because somebody's got the checkbook and they're big and powerful, they've got the checkbook, they introduce the change and it blows up the bank.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is then the one with the checkbook going to take the responsibility?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Probably going to need to find a new supplier that works in the same way as you do, aren't you? I think that might be the end of that story.
And I've got Phil. Phil, are you still there? Or has he gone? Oh, okay. I didn't give him a chance to say anything, but I think we've gone past the allotted time. Does anybody have any burning desire to say anything or make any comments? But I think we could carry on the discussion as well.
Here all night, won't we?
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you everyone for being so interactive and joining in. We've really appreciated that. It's been good.
Thank you for all the participation around the polls. I want to thank Helen because of all the insight and the input. And there's been a lot of work put in to get this right. Do reach out to us to let us know what you'd like to hear about. And I know, just looking at the comments, it was Chris Sutton suggested something to do with, I'm just trying to find this comment, Nick's think with digital collaboration across the borders with enterprise. We need to understand that a little bit better. Has Chris gone?
Yeah, he's dropped off, but we can have a chat with him, can't we?
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, Stephen. Thanks, Paul. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I think we'll call it a day. Any final comment from you, Helen? I'll leave it to you.
No, thank you. Called it. And thanks everybody else.
So, thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye now.